Congratulations! You have found the Lambcast, the official podcast of the large association of movie blogs, also known as the Lamb. The Lamb is the largest collective of online movie blogs and podcasts with 2,000 members and counting. Every week on the Lambcast, various members of the Lamb community get together to talk about our favorite subject, movies. So bookmark the Lamb and follow us on social media. Be sure to join us each week to hear a lively discussion of films and movie-related talk from our members. Join the flock at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Greetings from the wastelands. This is the citadel known as the Lambcast. Today is episode 733, and we're in search of the warrior called Max. This is, after all, his saga, as indicated by the title, but Max is missing in this entry in the post-apocalyptic world of Australia. This week is a prequel story focusing on Praetorian Furiosa. In the previous film, she was played by Charlize Theron, but for this movie, she has Anna Taylor-Joy and Aliyah Brown as the younger versions of the character. I'm Richard Kirkham, your host for the Lambcast, and this week we're joined by three other scavengers of the wasteland. Daniel Lackey is driving his war rig into the show today. Welcome, Daniel.
You two break my heart, and it's not fair. Well, you three. However many of there you are. I don't know. I can't count.
It's okay. You can be heartbroken. And tell me which flavor of tears you're getting.
I'm getting hate tears. I'm getting tears of it was like joy and sorrow, but I really want to add like the third, which would be hatred.
We'll get all those emotions in the next month in In and Out Part 2.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Damien Riley is a threat to take over Gastown. That is, if they make the same mistake that Troy did.
Hello there. Yes, as long as you have a road ahead of you that's blazing, I think you're on the way to the plot. But I think you did maybe give a spoiler there, Richard, about I don't know, the Charlize Theron pre-character actor. Isn't that something you have to discover?
No, I don't think so. I think everybody who's going to see these movies will know what's going on here.
There you go.
And James Wilson, after a 40-day war, is ready for a nap, but he'll try and stay awake for this week's conversation.
Ready, set, go!
Everybody's on that IMDb page looking at the quotes, and there weren't that many.
God, yes.
All right. Well, Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, is an Australian post-apocalyptic action-adventure film directed and co-written and co-produced by George Miller. It's the fifth installment of the Mad Max franchise, and Furiosa serves as both a prequel and a spin-off to Mad Max, the Mad Max Fury Road movie, which was the previous entry. And it focuses on the character Imperator Furiosa, originally played, as we said before, by Charlize Theron in Fury Road, and replaced in this particular episode by two younger actresses. Sorry, Charlize, hate to diss you, but apparently you're too old to be playing your younger self. Anna Taylor-Joy and Aliyah Brown. We're going to try and go spoiler-free for the first part of the show, folks, so let's start with our general thoughts on the film. And Daniel, we'll begin with you. What did you think of the movie generally?
It's definitely a Mad Max film.
Uh-huh.
Yes, it would be.
It's one of those things where, I on the one hand, when it comes down to stylistics and what George Miller does, I don't know. This is very much kind of like an extension of Fury Road. There's really more continuity between Fury Road and Furiosa, I think, than any other two Mad Max films. It's got the same set of characters, it's got the same set of aesthetics. It's visibly the same world. The thing that continually kind of struck me about Furiosa is that this is really the only George Miller can make a movie like this. There's lots of, we're going through a phase where we have these big spectacular action movies are the thing now. We have the Marvel franchise, the various Marvel franchises. We have Fast and the Furious, but I don't think any of them are as visually distinct or distinct in kind of like how they feel. in terms of, the sort of dialogue, the sort of just the sort of thing you sign up for when you get a movie like this, as a George Miller movie goes. The thing I kept saying to myself over and over, and I don't want to be I'm going to single out Justin Lin, who directed like a few Fast and Furious movies. Anybody, I think, for the most part, can make a Justin Lin movie. Only George Miller can make a George Miller movie. And there's going to be a point, I think, where I'm going to get morbid here, but, sooner rather than later, because the man is 79, George Miller is going to stop making Mad Max movies, and somebody's going to, get the franchise. They're going to license it, and they're going to get the rights, and they're going to be making Mad Max movies. And unless they get the right director, and I have no idea who the right director is, the right director might not even exist. That's going to be a huge mistake for anybody not named George Miller to make these movies. But it's one of those things where I don't know how much I actually have to say about it as a general thing. I can pick apart like little things here and there, right? But in terms of you're going to go to Furiosa expecting a Mad Max experience. You're going to get people wearing bizarre costumes with spray paint on their faces. They're going to be, George Miller's dialogue is really distinctive. You have I'm having trouble like dragging out any real specific things here, like actual specific quotes, but like a lot of Chris Hemsworth's soliloquies on the subject of this or that. They're very distinctive. You have like only George Miller. You have a character in one of the older Mad Max movies called, the Ayatollah of Rock and Rolla. And you have a character here named, and I think he was in Fury Road, the Organic Mechanic. And, only George Miller is going to do that. This is the George Miller experience overall. And that is kind of like my general preface to the whole discussion. So that's what I'm going to start off with.
Yeah, well, George Miller has definitely got a distinctive filmmaking style. Despite having also done, Happy Feet and
Happy Feet and Save.
But when you're looking at an action movie and, you've got Mad Max in particular, I think it would be very hard to reproduce the characters and the dialogue and all of the things that are going on here. And, like you said, we've got this is a movie that has a lot of returning characters from the previous entry because it is a prequel kind of film. So it has to really reflect that same aesthetic, but it also has to have that kind of George Miller touch that you were talking about. Damien, what did you think of the movie?
Oh, hello there, Richard. Great to be back. I went to this yesterday, actually. It's really hot. Is it hot where you guys are?
No.
It's hot.
No,
Oh.
it's raining.
It hit 100 up here in Apple Valley yesterday. So, anyway, great day to go to the movies. I put it off a little bit. Sorry, did my homework last minute. But
like your students, I'm sure.
Yeah, exactly. I teach college freshman and sophomore English, so funny things about movies sometimes come into this. Gosh, I really liked it. I'm gonna just give it that kind of like friendly little pat on the back before I say a few things. I think I don't understand why I try to make films better. Do you guys ever do that? I think as critics we're thinking, oh, this could have been this, but it's like you gotta let the guy make his movie. Just let it be what it is. So that was a little challenge for me at the beginning. Mainly because I saw all these children.
Oh.
And I'm thinking, are we going to watch, like, people's heads being cut off, with the end of a motorcycle engine in front of a bunch of children? I don't know why it bothered me. I was like, and I know there's children in the other ones, but I don't know. That was like, gosh, I hope I didn't pay my ticket to come in here and just watch a bunch of children. So it did change, but pretty much the child idea was there. Stupid me, I found out it was a prequel, so that's why there's going to be all these children. I I went into it like really knowing nothing. I can't even remember Fury Road. That's how long it's been since it's just it's in my consciousness. I enjoy it. See, I'm the kind of guy. I'm a little older than some. I was born in '69, so I was like aware when Mad Max was out, and it was just freaking hip, So I didn't get the hipness on this one too much, but it's been gradually falling off for me. I mean, Tina Turner came after that, and obviously that's not the same vibe as Mad Max, so it's okay. It's like saying all Star Trek movies should be the same vibe. You know what I mean? You can't really do that, and you don't want to do that. You want a different kind of movie. But I was a little bit let down by it. A lot of sand, really good use of sand.
It gets everywhere.
It is annoying in course and gets everywhere.
Yeah, but
Wrong franchise.
Ultimately I enjoyed it. Now, here's something really funny. You might get a kick out of this. When I saw Anya Taylor-Joy morphed. Is that a spoiler? Maybe that's why I was going to ask you if that would be a spoiler. But anyway, it's like there's this new actress. She's fairly young. She's fairly cute. Who is it? Oh, she's a combination of two people. And I felt a little bit cheated when I found that out because I thought, oh, who is that girl? She's going to be something else. And there is a girl that plays the young girl. She does a great job. But then there's like a morphing of they actually, I don't know if they use AI per se, but CGI. That was ours long before AI, us film reviewers. But yeah, I liked it. I mean, you can tell I'm not 100% on it. When I get 100%, I just blah, 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 I have all these things to say. I really liked. Oh, there was one thing I wanted to bring up, and this might come up later too. But when the guy grabs her and takes her into the Chris Hemsworth character and says, she's from a place. Actually, I don't even remember the accent, but it's like she's from a place of abundance. He keeps saying that. She's from a place of abundance. She's from a place of abundance. And that just, I don't know, that kind of cracked me up because it just reminded me so much of when the guy that his eye keeps falling out, like the way that he talks. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
In Pirates of the Caribbean. She comes from a place, and I know it's not. That's probably Australian accent. Yeah, I just thought this is so canned. I mean, that's a canned thing to say, I think. And plus, abundance. What the hell? They don't like having a glass of water is abundance. They don't have to like dream of this heavenly place of abundance. So it was a little weird how he chose that. I don't know if you guys ever do any meditation, but they always say that, you're going to get more in life if you visualize yourself from a place of abundance. I think, is he just discovering that in his own personal life, and that's why he said that? It wasn't like a biblical word, in other words, from way back when in the story. So I'm having a tiny love affair with this movie. I think I might like it more down the road, so I don't want to cut it all off completely, but I was like, I got out of there. I was like, it's a road. It's on fire,
Well, we'll hear more of your criticisms as it comes up, and of course, your opinion seems to be evolving even as we're talking about it.
I know, now I like it.
Which is perfectly fine, perfectly
I
fine.
try to hold back until I get to know everybody because, I don't want to, say something's complete shit, But
Well, I'm completely
maybe later I will.
So, you just go with it.
By the way, I come from a place of abundance too. I have an abundance of crap that I need to get rid of. But it's not the kind of stuff that you want to have. It's the kind of stuff that people drag around on their back until they're old.
Yeah, I don't know how they could even know what abundance is, and why would it have to be the word abundance? It could be like they have 2 glasses of water instead of 1 over there. That would have been just like abundance. Anyway, it's kind of a weird word choice. That's all I'm saying.
James, did you have an abundance of ideas to share with us about this film?
I sure did.
Awesome.
Back to Daniel's point, George Miller is 79 years old, but he doesn't make movies like a 79-year-old. They're usually slower paced and contemplative. George Miller is like suddenly ramping up when you look at Fury Road and then 3,000 Years of Longing and then Furiosa, all of a sudden, he seems to be getting more and more. His movies are getting more and more faster and kinetic, and they're also have a lot more depth than his early movies did. It's pretty amazing just to see what he puts in. He's not the young Turk anymore, and he seems to be incredibly more diversified as far as what he's been reading, as far as philosophy and myth, and it's really interesting to see. He's getting better the older he gets, and that's just thrilling to watch. This movie was seemed to me, every time I see a George Miller movie, I'm surprised by how he is evolving as a director. And it's, he's basically got the playbook for Mad Max, but here there's a lot more shots just pulling into people's faces, the camera just ramming into what its subject matter is, and he's also pushing the limits of how he can undercrank the camera or speed ramp the camera. Right now he's getting to a point where it's really obvious. I'm sure he was doing it with every movie because, there's a limit to how fast you can move these vehicles.
Can I just hear 1 second? Don't lose that train of thought. But what is
Derail.
that mean exactly? I derailed your whole thought. I'm sorry. What does that mean? I mean, I can guarantee you a lot of people who listen to my podcast do not know what that cranking or something, cranking the camera, all that stuff.
Undercranking
Well,
means
most of the
that
time
instead of running, it means that instead of running at 24 frames per second, you're running at 20 frames per second. So the movie is that much faster by 4 frames.
I see. I know what that looks like.
Yeah, well, you'll know a lot what it looks like if you watch either the last 2 films that George Miller made, because he does that quite a bit, and it has an interesting on-screen effect.
Yes,
and it creates
it really
a more surreal kind of environment for what's going on. So it doesn't look naturalistic, but it's not unnatural. It just
I'm
looks
so glad
different.
I asked because I thought you were talking about like maybe I didn't know what you were talking about. That's why I asked.
Daniel, in older movies, you will see that sometimes things look sped up.
Right. That's what when you were describing
just because they're trying to get
almost
the
like a strobe
action
light
to be a little bit faster,
Yeah,
And
you're right. It's all over those. I think Fury Road does that a few times, and it's pretty intense. What about the movie 300? Is that what they're talking about? Like, is it in that too? Because that's really visual to me.
What Snyder did in 300 was something in the editing process called speed ramping.
Okay.
Which is where you change the speed at which the film is running. So in other words, you go from a normal pace and you insert frames in order to slow it down into a slow motion kind of balletic feel. And the other thing is that an obvious example is that stood out like a sore thumb in this particular film, Die Another Day. They used that a lot during the chases, where it would stutter into a fast speed just to get through it, and then slow it down into the normal pace at which it would be. It's an editing conceit. But undercranking has always been used, and overcranking is when you go. It's It refers back to when they used to crank movie cameras back in the silent days.
And
so
that's
they
great.
would slow things down, and then if they sped up the cranking, they'd slow the action down. But if they slowed the cranking, it sped everything up. And
thank you so much. That's an awesome thing to, bring up from now on when I talk about movies.
Well, thank you for asking the question, Damien, because
Yeah.
it always helps clarify things for people listening who maybe don't know all of the terminology. And believe me, half of what James just described I was familiar with, and the other half I was not familiar with, and it's nice to have a conversation about it. And that wasn't
But
the
James,
direction
I
we
do
were going
apologize.
originally, but it worked out fine.
I don't mind it. I don't ever mind if I interrupt someone who's being nice to me, like Richard right now. But I'm so sorry that I interrupted you. I regret doing that. But boy, I'm
not
so
at all.
happy with the answer.
I'll just babble on and assume that everybody knows what I'm talking about.
We'll keep going.
Because it's important to clarify certain points.
Sure.
Especially if they're technical.
I mean, you could do a whole podcast show on that. Bring out a few movies that use it.
I'm sure that there are tech shows that do that exact same thing. You spend enough time on YouTube and you'll find somebody who is anxious to talk about their craft and share information about it, and it would be covered. And I'll bet James has watched some of those.
I haven't.
They're out there.
All right, I'm out $5.
Movies. So we were talking about pace and kinetic aspects of this. This is so much. He's pushing the limit to how far he can speed things up. As Richard said, it is really surrealistic at points where it's so obvious that it's being sped up. Whereas back in the early Mad Max films, the idea was not to show it being obvious, in order to make it feel natural and give you a sense of hyper speed. But here he's just pushing it. I'd say if he in Fury Road, if he was had things to a 10, he's pushing it to a 12 right now. And I found that fascinating. Anytime you delve into the unnatural in movies, it's fascinating to me. Why you do that and what the effect is you're trying to get. Like in Saving Private Ryan, remember the D-Day invasion?
Yeah.
Here, all of a sudden, everything slowed down and got stuttered. What they did was they used an old aperture on a camera.
Oh, yeah.
That would just slow things down and make it look surreal. Mm-hmm. Anytime they do that, Peter Hunt clipping out a frame from the James Bond fights in order to make it look punchier.
Yeah.
Anytime they do something like that, it just fascinates me.
So is it like a practical effect in a way, because it's not done in the end game on a PC. It has to be done when it's being filmed. It's almost like a practical effect, huh? I mean, it's too digital. It's too digital to be thought of as a practical effect, because practical effects, to my understanding, are like, when you get out the chocolate sauce, put it all over the face.
I do have a question. This is not something I thought of going into this. Does anybody know if this was shot on film or if this was shot digitally?
It was shot digitally.
That's a good question.
Okay.
Okay. Digitally, you have a lot more control over, frame rate while you're filming. But, you got to get what you got to get.
Uh-huh.
If you're filming and you're under cranking, what if you don't like the effect?
Yeah.
There's a lot of pre-visualization going on so that you don't make mistakes when you're actually on set, but you're burning money on set.
And
so you got to make sure that what you shoot you can use.
Let me point out that since Fury Road 9 years ago, there's been so much more technological innovation in regard to digital filmmaking that the stuff that they did then probably feels antiquated compared to the things that are going on now, even though it's only been a short while. And the films still have, a very similar look and feel, but the process of doing it, I'm sure, is vastly different.
And because it's digital, you can do so much more in the editing now that you couldn't do before. I mean, you were dealing with frames. Now you've got 30 frames per second with digital. If you're filming at 30 frames, if you're doing it like Peter Jackson,
48 frames.
Yeah. And
that's why it was so fascinating to me how you drew out that it is like a tool that he, particularly uses. And I love doing stuff like that. Even when I'm recording, like right now, we're all set up to talk. These are like practical things that you do to produce a good podcast, right? So he's doing that, and I find that amazing. And in a time of digital, everything's so digital that he can, and it's something you have seen and enjoy in his movies. It's incredible to me.
But you can take it too far.
Oh.
I mean, you can really take it too far to the point where it gets really, really annoying.
Yeah.
And so in your face. I thought it was really subtle here, but it crossed that razor blade of being subtle, but also making sure that you saw it and got the reaction that you wanted to from it. It's like, for me, it was like, okay, what if you went in and you watched a film on ambient? And all of a sudden everything was speeding up around you. That was the impression that I had. And I just found that thrilling, especially from a 79-year-old director.
Yeah.
Well, on this show, of course, we don't discriminate against the aged. James and I are both examples of that.
Yeah.
And
Damien, you're a young pup
comparatively, yes.
Oh, am I? That's good to hear.
Yes.
I've been growing my beard out. My mom told me I look just like Santa Claus, so it's nice to hear that.
Well,
she keeps my ego in check.
I just shaved my winter beard off where I was starting to look like an old sourdough prospector.
Now that would be cool to me. I like history that much.
It just went to a goatee, so I know whereof you speak.
Is just out of curiosity, is anybody on this podcast under the age of 40?
No.
Way past.
Daniel, unless you're under 40.
No, I just turned 50.
Yeah, we've
so
got.
You're going to be the Lorax of the younger folk.
Yeah.
You're going to give them the messages.
Isn't it great to come on the Lambcast and feel young?
Yeah.
It was funny. I went to a reunion of old radio station buddies the other day because a couple of our numbers died, and the most articulate guy there was the guy who got up and said, he's still working in radio, and he's 74 or something like that. And he said, first off, I just want to tell you how thrilled I am to not be the oldest one in the room.
Well, thank you, James, for your insight. We're going to come back and talk about some of those other things. The tech talk took us down a side road instead of the Fury road.
Sorry about that.
But that's okay. That's okay. I'll just offer a couple of quick comments before we get into some other issues here. I like the film very much. I was, as usual, impressed by the energy in the action sequences. I am a little hesitant. We're going to talk about this in a couple of minutes, but it is a long movie. And there are times that it felt long, yes. So I'll ask everybody's opinion about that later on. But I did think that there were great elements to the story that got appropriate attention, and then there were some that seemed like they languished a bit in how much attention they got. So that was a little bit of a problem for me. I liked the film very much. However, I'm going to ask people to maybe do a ranking of the Mad Max films toward the end of this discussion. And I don't want to tip my hand too much, but this will not be at the top of my list of Mad Max films. So
no.
We'll save that for the end of the show.
Yeah. It's funny because I haven't been on the show for a while, and I thought, this is probably like Richard's baby movie. He's just going to love this movie. He's going to like totally say, oh, and I love this. So don't jump right in criticizing. You want to be asked back.
No, everybody can jump in with criticism whenever they want. We just want to make sure that we give everybody a chance to explain their points. We had a conversation a couple of weeks ago on The Fall Guy, and I felt a little bit like the lone outlier on this. I know James didn't like the movie. He wasn't on our show, but I saw his review. He was not enthusiastic about it at all, whereas I was a heck of a lot more enthusiastic than the other people on the show. And that's what it's all about, having a divergence of opinions. That's why people want to listen. They say, well, if everybody's saying the same thing, it's not necessarily going to be as interesting as we would hope it would be.
That's why you're such a great host, right?
Well, that's your
tagline right there.
Yeah, that's it. Go ahead, put it on the ads, and I'll promote it that way.
You on more.
Well, one of the things that is different about this movie from the other movies is that it is organized by chapters, and I wanted to ask you guys about that. What did you think of the chapter structure of the film, and did the chaptering make sense to you? I mean, it's pretty much chronological, but they do break it down into very distinct sections. Damien, let's start with you.
Yeah.
Did you notice the chapters?
Did
you like them, or did you not like them?
I don't know if, I don't really, I'm sorry, I don't get around enough to all you guys' podcasts. I used to read them a lot, or listen to it all the time. I've gotten away from it. So I don't know if any of you guys posted your review of this movie, but I did last night.
Yeah.
And that's one thing that I said in it that I sort of, it had a lot of potential, but I don't think it bore it out. Like, in other words, chapter 1, like in Moby Dick, chapter 1, we're going to talk about all the tools he uses to make it into a, when he fillets it, and there'll be all these weird chapters, stuff like that. I thought it was going to be like that, like the beginning, the middle, but it was just the same kind of beating you up in the face just for fun, And if they, in other words, they could have been used, but then again, I'm a literature major, so I would have liked it to have been each one like that. The place of abundance. I forget, is that what they call it? I don't remember.
The chapter there is the pole of inaccessibility.
Yeah, but that right there, it was totally different. My eyes saw something completely different, and I was so excited. If they maybe had something like that for each chapter, well, you remembered it, so it affected you. But I think that was what they were going for, but it didn't really reach me because every chapter looked the same.
All right, so you didn't think the chapters were particularly distinct. Daniel, how about you? What was your opinion about the chapter structure?
So the chapter structure, when you put those things in a film, I'm thinking of two examples here. One is a fairly famous example. The other one is a more obscure art film that I don't know anybody would have seen. But two movies that come to mind: 2001: A Space Odyssey on the one hand, and the other hand, a Canadian film from about 5 years ago called The 20th Century. And that it really sort of, when you do that, I was thinking when watching these two films, when you do stuff like that, when you put the chapters in there, and I think Wes Anderson may do something similar, at least in Rushmore, you're calling the audience's attention to the structure of the story. It's a literary device, obviously, but you're causing your structure is not in something that the audience necessarily always notices. And one of the things that I kind of said earlier before we started recording is this is a Mad Max movie, and I don't think a lot of people are really watching it for the plot.
Mm-mm.
So it's a very interesting thing for Miller to have done, is to call attention to the structure of the plot, which is not necessarily something that most of the audience is going to do. I think a lot of the target audience for this film is basically going to want to see a bunch of people in outrageous costumes, see outrageous things, drive across, the great wide Australian empty in outrageous cars and set things on fire and blow things up. But I think this is Miller's way of telling the audience to pay pay attention to the actual story, to pay attention to the journey that Furiosa takes over the course of the film.
You know what it felt like to me along those lines? It felt to me like at some dinner party before the thing was completely, released, somebody said, it's a little long. Hey, let's put in subtitles. That's how it felt to me. It didn't feel like it was like, we have this amazing idea to use this, chapter device.
Yeah, it's not, I don't think it's essential to how the film works, but I think it is, in a way, Miller and his co-writer, or whoever is making the decision to divvy it up like this, it is their way of trying to subtly, or maybe not so subtly, direct the audience's attention to the actual story and, like I said, the arc of development of how the character develops.
Yeah, the other thing it does is, I thought they were unnecessary. I thought this is the first time he's done it in a Mad Max movie. Daniel, I agree with your point that I think it's meant to call attention to it, but I also think if he didn't put those in, we would be confused as far as time transitions, because we don't see, if those weren't there, we wouldn't have the breaks to know that there was a time jump.
I do see that as an issue in a couple of spots, that we do need those indications of a time. I mean, there are a couple of on-screen indications of time jumps. The wig falling into the tree branch and then growing out over a period of time, that gives us a pretty clear indication that a time jump has occurred without us seeing other things on the screen. But for example, the distance from when the character is basically in the garage to when the character is the stowaway on the war rig, I did kind of think that there needed to be some indication that there was a change in time there, that it didn't happen the instant they entered into the garage setting.
And in a movie like this, even though it's 2.5 hours long, it's moving fast. So details are going to get lost in the viewing. And if you get lost, you get out of the movie.
I'm sorry, go on.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, you mentioned pacing. And since we're talking about structure and pacing, there is something I want to kind of mention about this movie. Last year I was introduced to a classic movie from the late 70s I had never seen before, which was William Friedkin's Sorcerer.
Yes.
And here's the thing that strikes me about Sorcerer, and I think the same thing applies to Furiosa. Most action movies, most thrillers, have a certain sort of structure of tension, release, tension, release, tension, release. It's like a roller coaster, which is why they used a roller coaster metaphor. Sorcerer does not operate like that.
There's no release.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Once things start happening in Sorcerer, they don't slow down. And what you get is this overall effect that you're almost, at least I was, on the edge of my seat, figuratively, the entire time, thinking that everything could just blow up at any given moment.
Yeah.
And that's almost the same. I didn't get quite the same feeling from Furiosa, but Furiosa does also not have a lot of points of release. It has a few. It definitely has more than Sorcerer, but it is a very kinetic film. It's a very fast film that rarely slows down to let the audience catch its breath.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And I also think that that even though I'm kind of the same mind that we don't need all of these chapters, that there would need to be some other device used to indicate kind of the passage of time or the connection between one sequence and the next. Otherwise it would be confusing. And there were a couple of places where I found that confusion was not solved by the tools that they used. There's an episode that takes place kind of, 2/3 of the way through the film, maybe it's 3/4 of the way through the film, and I'm still a little unclear on what happened and how it happened. But we'll get to that in a moment. At this point, by the way, I want to tell my listeners that we're probably going to be crossing the spoiler line here, because we're going to start talking about particular sequences in the movie and events that happen. And if you want to be surprised by anything, look, the action stuff, it's hard to spoil any of that, but there are some things that happen during the sequences that are related to the story. So spoiler walls down, folks, and anything that you feel like you need to talk about is fair game. And that's kind of where I wanted to go next, is to the action sequences. Did you have one that you liked the best? Is there one that stood out to you that was clearly the apex of the film when it comes to the action?
Just Damien. I probably, shouldn't be the first, but I'm going to be anyway, because I kind of, again, I will put my question out there, is the whole like suicide bombing thing. Like when I saw that and nobody's jumping in, but
you're talking about, yes, the attack on the Citadel by the biker horde.
It's that, and okay, so they were putting stuff on the suicide bomber's back, correct? They were taking it off motorcycles and like kind of putting it on. I don't remember the exact details, but it's like they were building this thing, and then you find out it's like a suicide. It wasn't that scene; it was an earlier scene. Anyway. It's like the kids were building it, but they weren't putting it on themselves. I don't remember exactly. I get a little confused, but to me it had the significance of a suicide bombing, either in the works and then the one I do remember you're talking about, where he really did, kill himself.
Well, the War Boys are basically the fodder, of the story, and they are the willing fodder, because they have been immersed in this cult where they believe that they are going to be reborn, they're going to Valhalla as long as they sacrifice themselves in a way that is heroic in service of their cult leader. And so, whether they are, jumping to make sure that their bombs land on the appropriate target, or whether they are launching one of their fellow war boys into somebody else, it's all deliberate, for sure.
That was. Go ahead. That's all.
What really and there's a scene that really kind of hammers it home. The first confrontation between Dementis and Immortan Joe, where Immortan Joe just basically says to Dementis, "Have one of your men just pick any of my war boys at random," and they pick one. This guy goes off, does this huge heroic jump, and explodes at the end of it. And Immortan Joe just looks at Dementis and says, "Yeah, they're all going to do that for me."
Yeah.
Well, that was. I thought that was an interesting scene. The biker horde at the Citadel, but that was one of the shorter scenes because the horde retreats pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yes.
To me, the apex predator of these action sequences was the Raiders' attack on the second rig when Furiosa, is the stowaway.
Yeah, it's the whole stowaway chapter.
Yeah, exactly.
That was my standout as well.
And is that the one that ends with, I don't remember the character's name, but the guy that's hiding in the back of the rig? He's got a compartment, and I don't remember the name of the weapon. The big honking thing at the back of the rig.
Yeah.
And he ends up getting shot, and Furiosa has to deploy it, and it's the thing that sucks the guy who's basically got the giant fan on his back with the parachute. And it sucks him in. Yeah, that's my answer too.
Well, I think, one of the reasons that this scene stands out is because it does feature Anya Taylor-Joy in the character in full. This is the chance where we get to see her as the character Furiosa that we know from the earlier film. Although she's not as skilled as she will be later. She is certainly capable, but of course it's kind of a conflict also because she is in the position where she's a stowaway. She's not supposed to be there in the first place, and then she's also trying to hijack the rig for herself. So you get kind of a double sort of thing that's going on. There's a quick alliance, and then there's a separation, and then there's another alliance that takes place here. And I like that whole sequence because I thought the action was staged really well. She was integrated into it thoroughly, and it looks spectacular, and it goes on a long time. It's also maybe the sequence that is the most reminiscent of the Road Warrior film, with that long attack at the end of the movie.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree.
All right. Well, I mentioned it, and we've talked about it a little bit before.
Consensus.
The runtime of the film is 148 minutes, so it's basically 2.5 hours. This is the longest of these Mad Max films to date. How did you guys feel about that? Was that a problem for anybody, or did you think it all went swimmingly because it was so kinetic?
As the
I want to
person,
ask the 40-year-old something. Who's 40? Let's see. That's Daniel?
Daniel's 50.
no, I'm 50. I'm 50.
Oh, 50.
Daniel's the
Still,
kid.
you're 5 years younger than me, so you probably don't know that.
Oh wow, I'm still the baby. I'm still the baby in the group.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. But I just want. I don't even. I've been thinking, should I say this? I'm just gonna say it. Are you forgetting the drug audience in their 20s?
I don't think of any. I don't think of anybody in their 20s.
Well, because I teach college, so these are people coming there like 19 to 25 in my classes, and some of them are on drugs, you know. So it just kind of makes me wonder if that's just sort of like a really long, lot of fire, a lot of, you know, all the stuff on Fury Road type stuff. But who cares how long it is, because you've got this like at least a decade, at least people from their 20s and 30s. I know people that are doing drugs. So, and my daughters are younger. They have all their friends do drugs, mushrooms even. They're doing mushrooms a lot now. So I just bring it up to just kind of throw it out there. That could be part of the demographic why it's so long.
See, I discovered I can't watch movies while high because when I'm high, that turns off my short-term memory.
Okay, not that you.
I have taken edibles. Watched entire movies.
Yeah.
Can't remember a thing about them.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm saying. To some people, it's not an issue. In I think it has to do with sort of a generation. Now, there's really young people that I know personally that just love movies. They're totally sober people. They just dig it. But I think there is a piece of the pie here that I'm slightly aware of, not totally aware of, but I don't know. It's like the longer the better. You know what I mean, Richard? It's like,
well, you know, I know that there are people out there who say, "Give me more. I'm happy.
Yeah.
You know, I spent my money. I want to be in the seat. I want to get as much as possible out of this." And you know, as long as you're still involved in the story and engaged in it, I don't really have a problem with something being long.
right.
Except that, you know, I think you could easily have said, well, let's make this 2 movies, and you know, we'll have one movie featuring Aaliyah Brown and the other one featuring Anna Taylor-Joy, and
let's make it a trilogy and then get Peter Jackson involved.
Yeah.
I think for the part of the pie that you are and I am, Richard, that we want to see, you know, it needs to hold our attention, kind of a thing, with the plot and reality, not just speed, light. So for us, yeah, I think you're right. For some reason, though, they got approved. You know, people want these long, just droning movies.
Well, here's the thing. I think because you have so many action sequences, and all of the action sequences are, you know, kinetic and energetic, and they go on for a long period of time. Each of them does. That it has the effect of making the film feel longer, because you are, you know, what is this still going on? There's no respite between them, and if you're not going to have any respite, then I think you need the shorter films. But the
people supplying the money to him probably don't agree with that. You know what I mean?
The opposite point is that the shorter the movie, the more times you can run it in a theater, and the more money you make.
Yeah,
it's this sort of weird cultural thing, and I think a lot of things are contributing to it.
Yeah.
The first thing that's contributing to it is that post-COVID and with inflation, the prices of tickets are higher.
Yeah.
When people, and a lot of people go to films with their families, you've got to take into account the price of concessions and all that. It's a major financial outlay for a family of 3 or 4 to go to see a movie. You want to get your money's worth. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I think budgets have a lot to do with it. We're getting to a point where huge tentpole, blockbuster, whatever you want to call it, films that take up spots in a studio schedule, a release company schedule. The budget on them is approaching the middle 9 figures, and you've got to justify that budget. For myself, if things feel like they're not going on and on and on and on and on and on and on forever, I'm fine for the most part with a longer movie. I think a big offender in this is just going on too long is John Wick 4.
I hear you. Yeah, I remember my grandpa used to always say we'd get out of E.T. or some movie that had nothing to do with westerns, and he'd be like, "There weren't enough horses in that movie." It's just like some people want a certain thing out of a movie. I'm like you, Richard. And according to what you're saying, people that just look at plot and look at what this is. One problem with it is they don't have a measuring rod for this. Each one can be different, and that'd be okay. And but they're not. No, I don't know what I'm trying. What I'm trying to say is that I'm personally learning in my reviewing and movies and experience and stuff like that. I'm just learning that there's like this silent group out there that, I'm learning that. So how do you deal with it as a critic? You just go, oh, there might be something other reason, which Richard always says that. But as far as I'm concerned, it's too long. I mean, it was. I can say it now. I left early. I know that's the mortal sin of a film reviewer, but I did.
Well, did you miss the sequence
since you
at
saw
the
Fury
end?
Road, you didn't miss anything.
Yes.
That brings up a really stupid topic, but I don't want to bring it up anyway. I had a tiny, tiny headache, not a big headache, just like a barely, just kind of annoying me. Sort of, I touch my eyebrow, it would go away. So I'm like, it was just kept thinking about my headache, and do you have to be feeling really good to watch this movie? Maybe, and so, I will watch it again where I don't have a headache, but probably, maybe not though. It didn't really impress me. But for a lot of people, I think this is an important movie, and I think the longer the better, not necessarily just because of drugs, but there's some mindless movie watching going on out there. They're not analyzing it as much as us, but
well, also bear in mind that a lot of people are streaming, and they're streaming series.
Oh yeah.
So, and they're binge watching.
Yeah, that was
their tolerance for long spaces of time are getting better. Yeah. Depending on how you look at it. But the other thing is just, the whole artistic vision of movie making. Are you telling the story as efficiently as you can? Are you throwing in subplots that, if they're there, they just extend the run of the time, but the main through line of the movie, does it contribute to it? I mean, are you going to be Zack Snyder with a 4-hour cut that you cut down to 2 hours for a theatrical feature?
I like what Daniel said about the when he was talking about like the budgets. I think a lot of times it's like, look how long our movie is. You know what I mean? Come on in and have this experience. I think that's what you said, but yeah, it's sort of like, movies are something, like you said, post pandemic too. People can just like stretch out and say, this is my world. But I don't know. I see less and less concern with like structure of movies.
Yeah.
And I think they like this because they can make it real long and they didn't have to really worry about that structure. So, yeah.
And certainly, I am a consistent critic of the Fast and Furious movies. I don't like them. That is very much, I think the sort of thinking that goes into a Fast and Furious movie, where it is, we're just going to smear a hollow spectacle on the screen for 2.5 hours, and as long as we have Vin Diesel saying the word family every 15 minutes, the audience is going to accept that, and we're going to make a mint of money.
I'm Groot.
Basically.
Well, the other thing is, I had a point and I lost it. Derail.
It'll come back.
That happens.
Yes, it does.
So
The older you get, guys, prepare for it.
Or the more talk that we go into a different direction. Let's face it, every time we take a transition to a side road, you have to remember, wait, how many turns was it back to where I was before? And
I like what you said about budgets. You were talking about the budget, how it's changing, what they'll put out, based on the budget of the film. You were talking about that. Just basically we were talking about, like, I think structure is what we were talking about.
Yeah. Okay. My instinct is always, if I feel like we're coming to an end, I'm not worried about the length of the movie. As long as I'm not pulling out my phone and looking at the time, I'm good. But if I'm pulling out my phone and looking at the time, then the movie's not working.
Yeah. That's interesting. I as usual in this show, I keep taking things afield, but it just made me think of, like, well, who would want it long? And then it just, like, completely invaded my head, all these ideas why it could be long, But
it's really interesting. My favorite example of this is Once Upon a Time in America, the Sergio Leone movie.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan of Sergio Leone, and they were going to premiere Once Upon a Time in America at the Seattle International Film Festival, and I went. And the cut I saw was about 2.5 hours long, and it was interminable, absolutely interminable.
Held your interest?
What had happened was that Paramount got the 3.5 hour movie that Sergio Leone had made, which was filmed in a flashback structure, and then they recut it into chronological order, not the way it was intended to be made or shown. And it was interminable. But 2 years later, I saw the original version, and it flew by.
Oh, yeah. This is why I don't watch a whole bunch of new movies, because you don't know if you're going to get one like that. I look at. Do you guys, when you're looking at movies, do you look at the time of how long they are?
Yes.
Does that figure in? Okay.
Not until afterwards.
I
literally don't look at the time ahead of time if I can avoid it, because I don't want to think about that. I don't want it to be in my head that I'm going, all right, there's only an hour left. There's another half hour still going on here. I don't want to be thinking about those kinds of things. I just want to be engaged in what's going on in the story. And as we were talking about Once Upon a Time in America, there's a reason that directors and writers are responsible for putting the stories and movies together, and that the studio is responsible for marketing it and financing it and putting all the other elements together. And you don't necessarily want one in charge of the other.
Well, that's the truth.
And, in this particular case, look, George Miller has his finger in 4 pies at least in making this movie. He's the writer, producer, director, And he had something else to do in the movie. He didn't write the music. That would have been John Carpenter. But they're doing a lot on the film. They have to make the decisions about how the film is structured and how it's paced. And there are legitimate criticisms that can be made that say, can we tighten something up here? Would it work better if we try it a different way? And you're getting other points of view, but ultimately it has to be the decision, I think, of the filmmakers to say, well, this is the way the story's supposed to work. If it doesn't work this way, and I'm not sure that somebody else can fix it. They always talk about we can fix it in post. Editors can save movies. That's true, but they can't save every movie, and there has to be something there in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't want to get caught up too much in this other discussion about other movies and the length of all movies. I was just talking about this particular film. As we finish up our discussion here, I was going to ask if you guys had a ranking of the Mad Max films. It sounds, Damien, like you haven't seen any of them for a while, so it might be a little bit tougher for you to do.
Yeah, it would be. Don't include me because I'll just say Mad Max the first one because I do love that.
But Daniel, you've seen all of them, haven't you?
I have not seen Beyond Thunderdome.
Oh, okay. So of the ones that you have seen, would you be willing to give a ranking of them?
I would say Fury Road is the best. Then I would go with the original Mad Max. I know I'm a little bit weird in that I prefer the first Mad Max to Mad Max 2: The Road Warrior. Mm-hmm. But a lot of that is I just think the toe cutter is hilarious. Who is the same actor, of course, that played Immortan Joe in Fury Road. Then I would say Furiosa at number 3, and then I would say The Road Warrior. But I like them all. Putting The Road Warrior last is by no means a statement that I don't like it. It's just the one that I don't love the most.
Okay, good. Will you keep that quote in mind when we get to my ranking? James, how about you?
Road Warrior first.
Okay.
Then Fury Road. Then Furiosa. Mad Max. Thunderdome.
And I'm going to go Road Warrior at the top. To me, it is.
I knew you were going to do that. We're the same generation.
Yeah, it's 90 minutes of perfection. you know? And then Fury Road, which I think kind of reinvigorates everything in the story and kind of ramps up the energy. I mean, after the Road Warrior, you say, well, how do you top all that stuff? And they couldn't quite do it with Thunderdome. They had a lot of good things in Thunderdome, but they couldn't quite top what was going on in Road Warrior. Fury Road manages to top it. Mad Max would be my third film because it is earlier on. Somebody was talking about how the films how George Miller had evolved as a filmmaker. Look, the original Mad Max is a low-budget film. It was made on a shoestring. It's an exploitation movie, and it works really well, and it's excellent for what it's supposed to be doing. And so even though it was done on a budget, they made it work really well, and it was an interesting concept. Yeah. Then I would go with Thunderdome because I think there are ideas in Thunderdome that are really interesting about the culture, about, I mean, kind of the stuff that is the world building in Fury Road and in Furiosa kind of starts with Thunderdome, and I really liked the emphasis on the evolution of the Mad Max character in that particular film. That's the thing that I think it has going for it. And then Furiosa is at the bottom of my list. And let me, what does it quote Daniel? That does not mean that I did not like it. It just means that it was the least of the 5 films that I've seen, and I like them all extremely well. Well, we're going to leave our discussion of the Mad Max saga, Furiosa. Oh, wait, I got that backwards. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga film. And we're going to take a quick break for some words from fellow Lamb Podcasting Network show, and then we'll be back with our exit question of the week.
The Blueprint Review podcast is a monthly show where writers from the Blueprint Review website get together for a loose conversation about a wide range of films and physical media. In the show, the team reviews at least one previously unwatched disc from their individual collections, as well as talking about upcoming releases that they're excited about. So, if you're into films and shiny discs, go check out the Blueprint Review podcast. You can find us on most major podcasting platforms.
Wow. I will like and subscribe just from that promo.
Uh-huh.
We're back, and it's time for our exit question of the week. And the question I asked my guests to think about before the show was simple. Other than the Mad Max films, what are the most impressive car stunts you've seen in movies? And if you want to include a car chase, that's fine. But I was kind of thinking of particular stunts, but car chases in their totality could be included too if you wanted. I'm not that particular. James,
There's one with Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock called Speed.
Yeah, that's the whole movie.
Yeah.
That was impressive.
Yes. James, let's start with you. Were there some car stunts that you've seen over the years that you think are worth mentioning?
None that have made an impression on me, but I will go with a real weird outlier. One of my least favorite movies is The Man with the Golden Gun. But there are two car stunts in it that when I saw it, I just went, wow, that's really cool. One is really simple, and one is where Roger Moore is driving a
javelin.
A javelin. Oh, my God. And he's driving it down a Thailand street, and the villains pass him by going the other way. And what he does, what the stuntman does, this is the simplest thing in the world. I just wish I could do it. He steps up, throws it into reverse, steps on the gas, and then hits the brake. And while the car is swerving 180 degrees, he throws it into drive and takes off in one shot seamlessly. I thought, oh, geez, the simplest things. But then, yes, there's this perfectly engineered barrel roll of the javelin across the bridge. It was such a scary stunt. And they engineered it to an inch of its life. Bent the bridge sections just so.
The car spins 360 degrees in the air as it's flying. How would you? It rotates basically.
It pinwheels.
Yeah, it's not spinning, from side to side. It turns over and comes and rights itself again.
It's doing a barrel roll.
That's the way to describe it. It's a barrel roll.
A couple of times.
It
and then
was
lands
fantastic.
Perfectly on the other side of the bridge.
And then they shit on it.
Yes. Well, John Barry put in a whistle. But the story behind that is they engineered it so carefully, but they still didn't know. They had a lot of javelins all set up, ready to do the stunt, because they didn't think they'd be able to pull it off. They pulled it off on the first take.
There you go.
Broccoli came up to the stunt guy and said, that looked too good. Can we do it again? And the stuntman said, absolutely not.
Nope.
I'd be crazy to do that again.
Well, that's one of the ones I was going to talk about, so we've saved some time there.
There we go.
That's perfectly fine.
We've still got the Fast and the Furious series to do.
Oh, well, I know that Daniel has picked out several of those. He's already said he's an enthusiastic supporter of that.
Oh, yeah.
Daniel, did you have some other car stunts that you could mention? Probably not from the Fast and Furious.
Not really stunts per se, but I've always been partial to the car chase in Bullet.
Oh yeah.
God, yeah. He does that backwards shift change in that too.
Yeah. And one of the nice things about Bullet is that my uncle lives in the suburbs of San Francisco, and when they're driving onto the interstate, I recognize that stretch of interstate as
I've seen that. I've taken that exit.
Yeah. But that's the one I want to mention.
All right.
Lovely.
Yeah, there are a ton of good car chases that I think are worthy of being included in the discussion. I don't want to step on Damien's ideas. So, Damien, have you got a couple of car stunts or chases that you can share with us?
I loved this movie Ronin when it came out.
Oh!
And I saw it in the theater. I remember just like choking on my popcorn. I loved it so much. And there's a car chase in that. I want to go see it again, but it's quite well done. Anybody remember that one?
Yes, John Frankenheimer can shoot a chase scene like nobody's business.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that one, because I think that's the good counterpoint to that kind of chase compared to the chase that opens Quantum of Solace, the James Bond follow-up to Casino Royale, where you have a similar kind of chase, but you can't tell what the hell is going on.
Yeah. They edited it with a Cuisinart.
Yeah.
Horrible.
So
the whole movie was like that.
The stunt work can be ruined by the way the film is edited, and that's what happened there for sure.
You got to give it perspective and communicate the danger as opposed to just do the shot.
Yeah. Well, I'll mention the car flips that held the previous record before the Fall Guy movie that appeared in Casino Royale, where the Aston Martin, does the roll, and it rolls 7 times. That was pretty spectacular, and the car doesn't explode. It just looks the way a horrifying crash would look at that particular speed. It was, I think, a very well shot sequence in the film.
Extraordinarily well done and really well engineered, because the fact is Aston Martins can't flip. They're low to the ground. Their weight is really low. I have seen a race car Aston Martin that on a racetrack, there's a YouTube video of it. It has a spoiler on the back, and for some reason the guy lost control of it, and he did a 180 and was going backwards down the racetrack, and the spoiler, that Aston Martin actually left the ground and flew for several hundred feet.
Oh my God.
Because it can't flip.
I'm not sure if I'd prefer that.
No, but it's just scary as all hell to see.
Yeah. Yeah. And speaking of flips, another one that I want to mention is in The Dark Knight, the tractor trailer flip.
Oh.
That is pretty spectacular there they shoot in Chicago, and if you didn't get it right, you're going to knock out some of the financial district. I thought that looked really good on film. And then if we're going old school, I love the bullet chase. French Connection is great. But the 7-Ups, that conclusion of that chase with, the car running into the back of the tractor trailer was like, holy criminy. That was scary stuff. And I really like that sequence too.
That ending, I could feel the whiplash. If not the decapitation.
That's the one I was thinking about. That's the one I was feeling was the decapitation. I said, oh my gosh, this is not going to end well for somebody. Well, I want to give everybody a chance to promote the things that they have to talk about, whether it's a podcast, whether it is your blog site, or whether it is just your appearance someplace else. Damien, let's start with you. What have you got to promote this week?
I've been doing a podcast every day for 54 days.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I'm about ready for a break though. Yeah, it's a backwards promo. No. But there's a
Was it
lot of stuff that I've really been getting excited about at Riley on Film. That's
all
the
right?
name of my podcast
Nice.
and blog.
What's Is it just random, or is it? Are you doing a through line like the Power of
I've been
Film?
stuck on horror for a while. There's a lot of I don't know if you're into horror, but there's a whole lot of horror movies. Some of them are not really like they're movies people have given me that they're not really mainstream, but most of them are like just mainstream stuff that I watch on my Fire Stick, and I just love it. It's fun.
And
Is this
how long are the podcasts? Because if you're doing them every day,
30 minutes.
okay. I was going to say you've got to have something that's pretty manageable and reasonable.
No, I don't want to do it every day. I'm saying that's not right. I just like when lifting weights, you know.
there, there you go.
I think about 3 times a week would be the max that anybody should do. I mean, unless you just really
But
like.
didn't you just say you did 54 days in a row?
Yeah,
Don't do that.
I know. Because it used to be stressful for me, but I've been doing it over 10 years, I think. So now it's just part of my, almost like an online diary. I see the movie, I sit down, I talk about it, I post it. That's it. Oh, and I'm on YouTube now.
Good deal.
So Riley on Film is on YouTube if you want to get your daily dose over there.
Subscribe to Riley on Film. I'll put that in the show notes.
Damien,
man.
is this related at all, even tangentially, to your teaching duties?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, in fact, yeah, it's my blog. So the blog is more just like my life, but then Riley on Film is just right now it's horror movies. But yeah, so that's kind of how it breaks down. It's like my online diary. You know, people might find it interesting or not, but I mostly do it for myself. But the podcast is like my job. I've made it a job for myself, and I'm doing pretty well finally.
That's my blog too. It's for myself. I don't care who reads it, and I don't care who comments. And
it's good to have at least one thing like that in your life, you know. But in order to make something lucrative, you got to find that dream and that vision for it, and then just stick to it. And then it seems like it just happens.
It clears my mind, is what it does. It takes out the clutter.
Daniel, over there on Rabbit Hole Podcasts, I assume you've got something that we should be listening to, right?
Yeah, Jason Soto and I have a bi-weekly Doctor Who podcast that we have started up again now that the new season is dropping on Disney Plus. So we are we actually this morning I just recorded the next episode, which should be releasing I think sometime this week, probably Wednesday, about the 2 most recent installments, which are called Boom and 73 Yards. And that's really my only project at the moment.
All right, so all you Doctor Who fans out there should be checking in on that. And once again, we will put the link into the notes for the show. But I think last week, 3 out of the 4 guests were from the Rabbit Hole Productions. So I sent everybody to the same place. James, I know you never want to promote anything because you're not worried about it, but maybe you've got something that you want us to, think about a little bit.
Not really. I don't really have a question. I was thinking about this all week, whether I would have a question, certainly about the movie-going experience. Blogging by Cinemalite, every Sunday we do a Don't Make a Scene. Where we take a scene from a movie and just lay out the script and do screen caps to illustrate what's going on. Things are getting a little diverse in that territory. The Sundays, which is a couple of days ago, is going to be Spider-Man Homecoming. Why on earth would I make a scene of Spider-Man Homecoming? Well, there's one scene in a very tight space that shows just how good Michael Keaton is.
Nice. Well, on my site, I just am continuing to do the usual things. What if I see a movie in a theater, I'm going to post about it sooner or later. Lately, it's been later. It's taken me a while to catch up. I finally caught up on Friday, and now I'm one behind, and I'm about to be. Actually, I'm now two behind, even though I caught up on Friday. So I have my Mad Max Furiosa to write about. I saw Solo, the Star Wars saga, yesterday.
Had you ever seen it before?
Oh, I'd seen it before. Yes, I liked it quite well, and but we went to see it in a theater. So it's always, like I said, the motto of my site is, if I see it in the theater, you'll read about it here. So I do need to write about it, even if it's just a sentence that says, I saw this. And then, tonight I'm going to see Phantom of the Paradise again.
Nice.
Again.
Nice.
Yeah.
And I wrote about it extensively a year ago. We'll see what other things I can say about it after, I've written about it 2 or 3 times, But I managed to do that on a regular basis. And on the Lambcast, of course, I want to point everybody not only to our podcast, which I'm sure several of you have subscribed to already, but I would like to direct you to the YouTube channel, where every week I've been updating the channel, and there is a video version of the podcast as well. So we do some creative things. That's me, basically.
Yeah.
I do some creative stuff, trying to learn how to do things, continue to develop my internet skills. I'm never going to be doing the kind of editing that people do when they produce some of those fantastic TikTok videos, but I'm having fun doing it, and I think you guys will enjoy watching it. So
it's really illustrative, and it's always a debate whether I'm going to listen to the Lambcast or wait for it on YouTube, because there is so much value added on the YouTube channel.
That's what I try to do. Value added. It is a lot of work, but I have time most of the time. Although once again, I've fallen behind. Well, as somebody said it, ready, steady, go. I'm just going to say, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines. This has been the Lambcast.
You've been listening to the Lambcast. If you have an idea for a show or would like to join us on the Lambcast, contact us at largeassmovieblogs.com.
Find us on Facebook, just search for Lambcast, or on X, formerly Twitter, at Lambcast. And you can find us on YouTube as well. The Lamb site can be found at largeassmovieblogs.com. We'd also love it if you would leave a review on iTunes.